Reformed Church.
You know what? Let's turn real quick. John chapter 21. John chapter 21. And we were here, you know, there was a message that I preached, and I'm just going to give you the title real quick, Loving Jesus More Than Anyone's Opinion. And this may be sort of a part 2 to that, or going from there. But in John chapter 21, we see how Jesus continually asked Peter, do you love me? Do you love me, right? And a lot of what he was saying is, do you love me more than these, right? In other words, do you love me more than you love them? Do you love me more than you love them? And I know for a lot of people that's a little bit of a hard thing to understand at first, right? Because we you know, you're brought up, you know, if you're a mother, like your children are everything to you. Your household is first and all of this stuff. And there is a good priority to that, understanding your household first and then the world, then other people. But I think what happens is when we don't understand where love comes from, right? In other words, you can't you can't rightly love your family with the love of God unless you love him first, right? Because that is where the love of God comes from, right? To love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and to then love your neighbor as yourself, right? In other words, the love for others comes from your love for God. And loving God, obviously, we know, is faith in Jesus. So there is no such thing as a Christian being able to, by themselves, just love their family so much, and then they'll make a little time for God and love him too, right? It doesn't work like that. You actually stay stagnant in your love. In other words, to the extent that you love God is to the extent that you can love someone else, right? The way Jesus said, you know, be it unto you according to your faith, that's how it is for your family. The love of God that they get is the love of God that you know. Right? The extent of your faith in Jesus is to the extent that you can love someone with God's love, right? In other words, with a love that is unconditional, with a love that makes allowance for one another's faults, with a love that the body of Christ needs to experience, right? Has already experienced it from God, but needs to experience one to another, right? The division that exists today within the church at large is not because we talk about denominations and we talk about all this stuff, and it's not because of it's just because of one single thing. It's because the church is not united in the faith. That's the only reason why there's division. The church is not united in the faith, and it's not necessarily about denomination. You can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself, but even the reason why we call ourselves things, right, is because we're not just identifying just with him. And granted, again, you know, we were talking about this just when we were praying. But it's hard sometimes for people to separate themselves from the multitudes, or even to separate themselves from family. You know, I don't know what Abram was thinking. You know, what was going through his mind when the Lord told him, "Leave your father's house." I mean, he basically told him, "Leave everything that you know, and go to somewhere that you have no clue where you're going." I mean, I'm not even telling you the place that you're going. He said, "I'll show you later." You know, that's not, to a carnal mentality, that's not a small thing. You know, but there's something, you know, there is something about people that are of a different spirit, right? People that are of the Spirit of God and allow the Spirit of God to teach and correct their thinking, right? Because being led by the Spirit of God really comes from allowing the Lord to change your thinking. In other words, let him correct your mind so that you don't think like the world thinks, right? That's the only way that we can not think the way the world thinks, is allowing the Lord to change the way that you think, right? But there is something about being of a different spirit, right? Which is being not of the spirit of the world, right? But to understand, you know, and to hear the Spirit of God. Now, you know, John the Baptist, Abraham, David, Solomon, all of these men, you know, they heard of the Spirit of God. The Spirit of God was working through them, right? But they weren't born of God, though, right? Caleb was not born of God. Joshua was not born of God. They could hear the Spirit of God. The Spirit of God ministered to them, helped them, spoke through them, prophesied through them, all of that. But they just weren't born of God. They weren't made new creations yet, right? But they were, though, of a different spirit. That's how you get men. Like, I mean, can you just imagine, just for a quick second, right? 1 million people A million. That's a lot of people. 1 million people. And two men that are willing to go upstream from the direction that everybody else is going. You got 1 million people going this way and two that go that way. But see, listen, our minds, our unrenewed minds sometimes say, I mean, you could just look here, right? Yeah, this can't be true, because if it were true, there would be more people here. But it's just, we're just used to following the mob, right? Like we don't, like Caleb and Joshua were of a different spirit. So they were following Christ regardless of who was going with them. And here's what happens. When you want nothing but just him, your love for your brethren is overwhelming. Overwhelming. Your love for people is overwhelming. Caleb and Joshua and even Moses experienced the same thing. When you listen to the heart of these two men, right? Which is really just the heart of God. When they said, we can't go, we're nothing but grasshoppers in our sights, we can't enter into the land, which is where Jesus wants to bring the church, right? The church, Jesus wants the church to follow them. He wants us to follow him into the glory that he's already gone before and entered into, right? He wants us to chase him into that, right? That's the whole Chase Me series that Pastor Mike preached. That's the Chase Me song that Miss Lindsay wrote, right? It's about entering in and following the Lord into everything into the glory that he has, which is the same glory that he shared, right? So there is a thing when you are of a different spirit, right? And you hear people around you that you love automatically. Because of your love for God, you love these men and women and children. And to hear them, for you to hear them with the heart of God, for you to hear them say, we cannot go, we're nothing but grasshoppers. And they're saying, no, we are well able. We are well able to enter in. Like, no, come on, like right now, let's go. We are well able. And to hear these people that you love, and they're arguing back with them, and they're gnashing their teeth at them, and they're tearing their clothes. They're crying out to God, these two men, ripping their own clothes. Like, how could you think like that? How could you not think that the same God that brought us out of Egypt? And then listen, these two men that love God, Caleb and Joshua, they're hearing their very brethren, right? Their brothers and sisters say, no, let us raise up a man so that we can go back to bondage, so that we can go back to Egypt. That's heart-wrenching for God, a God that loves them so much, that gave these people his word, right? Teaching them the gospel like he teaches us the gospel, and to hear them say, no, let's go back to bondage, right? There is the heart of God, right? The desires that he puts into our heart. When you hear a church today that has been glorified with the glory of God, a church today that has received the Spirit of the living God, immersed in the Spirit of God, and to say, we have to die like the world dies. We have to suffer like the world suffers. Godliness is having nothing. Godliness is the way that you dress, right? To hear people just spew and see them so busy about so many man-made traditions, instead of just simply saying the way the Lord said, come to me, you that are weary and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. You'll find rest for your souls. And the yoke, he says, take my yoke upon you. He said, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Like, come follow me into what I died to give you. You know how heart-wrenching it is, like you see people, like your own brethren, right? To hear them saying, my God, like to say things that are so contrary. In other words, listen, you have heard even many other churches, I'm sure, say this, that the church in many ways adopts the way of the world, and then they go in that flow. But in a lot of ways, there is truth to that, right? That's when the church is being carnally minded, instead of being spiritually minded, which is to think the thoughts of God, right? To think in line with the mind of Christ, right? Instead of thinking that way, thinking carnally, what we end up doing is our heart, even though we have everything in us, even though we have the inheritance, this treasure in earthen vessels, We end up kind of walking just like the world walks, in the same direction that they walk, and feeling the same empathy and using words that the world is using today, and talking kind of like the world talks and sounding like the world sounds, and being inspirational in your words, and trying to be, trying to understand this and that. And it's just the way the world is talking, and that's the way that we end up talking, and the way that we end up trying to teach people. But it is, listen, the gospel is so much older than the church, right? The gospel dates all the way back to the gospel that the Lord began to speak to Abraham before there even was a church. So I want to tell you, listen, there is something that the Lord wants to do just for you. Like, forget about everybody else, right? It's not about like Reformed Church. It's not about, the churches around the world. It's just what he wants to do with you. He's saying to you, listen to me, he's saying to you, and I'll read it to you out of John chapter 21. After he tells Peter over and over again, do you love me? Right? Because he's not asking you, does your husband love me? Right? What I am doing with your husband has nothing to do with you. It's you know what I'm saying? Like what I do, what God is doing with somebody else, the Lord is basically saying, what is that to you? What is that to you? Whatever I'm saying to him, whatever I'm saying to her has nothing to do with you. You follow me. Do you love me? Which is, do you believe me? Right? Because a lot of people will hear what I'm saying and they won't believe me, but do you believe me? In other words, can you look at your Father, can you look at the Lord and say, Lord, I believe you. If nobody else believes you, I believe you. That sounds very romantic and it sounds very cool, right? But you have to think about what you're saying before you just blurt that out, right? Even if no one else follows you, I will follow you. So this is not about following a specific doctrine. This is not about following the things that men say. This is about hearing your shepherd, you that know his voice, and follow him into everything that he's given you. So he says it over and again, do you love me? It's not like, does your boyfriend love me? Does your girlfriend love me? Does your wife love me? Does your family love me? I mean, people spend so much time, oh, my family's not saved. Do you love me? Right? But do you know why that's so critical, right? And I'll keep reminding you, because if you don't love him, how can you love them? How can you really, truly love your family? How can you really truly love your brethren? How can you really truly love your neighbors? And the Lord wants you to do that. He wants the love that you have for them to be so overwhelming that you want them to share in the same life, in the same inheritance, in the same exceeding greatness of the power of God. You want them to have it too. You want them to share in it too. But don't get distracted with what it is that you're supposed to be doing. Do you love me? Do you love me? The Lord said it over and over again to Peter. Do you love me? Do you love me? In verse number 18 of John 21, Jesus said to him, then feed my sheep. For most assuredly I say to you that when you were younger, we'll skip that because that he's just telling him something about before his death. Verse number 19, signifying, verse number 19, this he spoke, signifying by what death he would glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he said to him, so he reminds him over and over again, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And then he says, follow me. Now here's the picture. The Lord Jesus Christ just said to you, you, Peter, follow me. I asked you 3 times, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you believe me? Do you believe me? No matter what everybody else, do you believe me? Lord, you know I love you. You know all things. So he says, okay, Peter, then listen, I know all the stuff that has happened. I know how you denied me. I get it, right? But I'm saying to you, you follow me. Let me bring you into where I'm going. Let me bring you into where I'm going, right? At this time, obviously, he hadn't entered into that glory yet. But let me bring you into where I'm going. So here's the picture. He just right there at that precise moment, he turns around and sees John walking behind him. He already forgot. He already forgot. The Lord just said, do you love me? Do you love me, Peter? Do you love me, Peter? Do you love me, Peter? You follow me. Turns around, looks at John, verse 20. Then Peter, turning around, saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following, who also had leaned on his breast at supper and said, Lord, who is the one that said, Lord, who is the one who betrays you? And Peter in verse 21, seeing him, says to Jesus, but Lord, what about this man? What the heck does that man have anything to do with what the Lord is speaking to you? What does that have to do with anything? I'm not, like, God is not going to talk to me about that man until, the Lord can speak to you about someone else and prophesy to them, but that's you with your eyes on Jesus, not you with your eyes on them, right? There's a difference, right? It's our preoccupation with other people instead of making our preoccupation the Lord. Lord, you are my one thing. You are, Lord, my one thing. And I will be able to love other people, right? This is what we tell people. It's hard for people sometimes to get it. It's easy when you're just seeking the Lord. But we tell people, listen to me, don't get into a relationship when you already have a relationship first, right? Learn to love the Lord first before you try to love somebody else, right? Because love Him first. Love Him first. And when you have an overwhelming love for the Lord and you've grown in your love for somebody else, then you can give them that love. But the thing is, what we end up doing is we're trying to love God, and at the same time we start giving other people our lust and our earthly lust and our earthly desire and our earthly love, right? And it breaks things down, right? It doesn't allow things to flourish in the best way that they should, right? So it's not just an example in one thing or in some things, right? It's just that if in all things we could love the Lord our God with all our heart. In other words, when we could learn what the Lord was trying to show Peter, right? And allow the Lord to say, follow me. Like, learn to follow Him and receive into you, right, manifestly everything that the Lord is doing. Because here's what's going to happen. Here's what happens. When you allow the Lord, again, there is so much in this, but Matthew 6 says, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. In the all things, that's everything. That's a husband, a wife, a spouse, girlfriend, a boyfriend, a house, a car, relationships, your family, children, everything. Everything prospering, everything the best that it could be, right? But all that the Lord is saying is, He's not saying, I don't want you to have it. The Lord says in that same context, He said, I know what you need before you even ask me. I know what you need. Before you even ask me, I know. And He wants to give it to you. But all that He's saying is just seek me first. That's all that He's saying. Seek me first and grow up here. Grow up here first. In other words, don't be a child anymore, tossed to and fro, but grow up here. And then if I can grow you up here, do you understand what you end up giving to other people? It's unconditional love. Unconditional love, unconditional prosperity, right? It's an unlimited, exceeding greatness of the power of God that is in you that you get to share with somebody else. That you could see a loved one hurt and lame to their feet and say, get up and walk. That you could give them everything. Now there is obviously a thing, I'm not trying to tell you today when the Lord will add to you what He's adding. Because, in your growth, the Lord could say, you know what? You're ready for this. I'll add that to you. But allowing the Lord, by God, to add things to you instead of us adding things to ourselves. The way the world works is it adds everything to itself. It wants a wife, it goes to get it. It wants a job, it goes to get it. You don't even know if that's a job you're supposed to have, but you go get one, right? It just, everything that the world does, it just does by its own wit, right? Because that's all that it has. But we are not that way, though, right? We have the power of God in us. We don't have to live alone. We don't have to act alone, right? It is no longer us that live, but Christ that lives in us. And the life that we now live in the flesh, we live by faith in the Son of God that loved us and gave Himself for us. In other words, we live by faith. The Lord will add it all to you, all of it. Every single bit of it in an abundance. Money, all of it in an abundance. He's just saying it's easy because you don't have to seek it. That's all that He's saying. Just grow up together in this thing, right? Grow up and in loving me, and you'll have listen, when that's the only job that you have to do is loving God, I'm telling you, as God is my witness, the things, I sit at work sometimes in my day job, and I'm just doing stuff, and I said, Lord, you know what? I'm no good at prioritizing. I'm no good at doing any of this stuff, right? So I need you to help me prioritize. I need you to tell me out of all the things that I could be doing, all the busy work that I could be doing, because you know what? When you trust people in a corporation, right? People will have you do stuff that's aimless, stuff that you end up doing and somebody changed their mind. So you spend tedious amount of hours doing something, and then they'll tell you last minute, oh yeah, we decided not to use that. So you know what? I want to be 10 steps ahead of everyone. I want to be able to know what I'm supposed to do before I even have to do it, right? I want to be able to wake up in the morning and not understand why I'm supposed to be up and just go with the flow and know, you know what, Lord, you woke me up. I must be doing something, right? There's something I don't have to plan my own day. I don't have to plan my own life. I don't have to figure out who I'm going to be when I grow up, right? I can allow the Lord to speak to my heart and tell me this is what I want you doing. This is where you're going to prosper. This is what will be useful for you. This is what will be prosperous for you. Listen, there is such an easy way to live. It's such an easy way to live. It's just following the Lord, right? And along the way, there's a lot of decisions you got to kind of make on your own because you're just growing in this thing. But don't be confused about one thing. There's just one thing that the Lord wants you to do. And the same way he told Peter, he said to Peter, he said, follow me. He said, don't worry about it. So the Lord answers him in verse number 22. He said to him, you're asking me about John, right? I'm talking to you. You're asking me about John, right? If I'm talking to you, why don't you ask me about me and I'll teach you about me? But right as I'm trying to teach you, you're asking me about John. So he says to him, if I will that he remain till I come, what is that to you? You follow me. You follow me, right? In other words, the Lord is getting ready to go to the cross, right? Actually, sorry. This is after the resurrection, right? So the Lord is saying to him, you follow me, right? So the Lord is getting ready to enter in to this glory, right? To be seated at the right hand of the Father, above all principality, power, dominion, so that you know what? So you don't have to fear anyone. When you are seated with Christ in heavenly places, what can men do to you? What threat? What could they do to intimidate you, right? Like, what corporation? What country, right? You see today, entire countries meddling in the affairs of other countries, right? Telling other countries what they're... Listen, put them all together. And the Lord will say, listen, they will all gather against you. You'll see these people gathering against you. He says, but that's not from me, so don't worry about it. Because more of those that are with you than those that are with them, right? The multitudes gather. You don't have to fear. You don't have to fear. But you know why? Because there's something that happens when you have your eyes just on him, that everything else kind of pales a bit, right? It's not that you don't love things. It's not that you don't care about stuff. I love my family. I love this church. I love you all. I love the people of this world. I love the church around the world. But there is something special, though, that I would have with him. I love him above all things. Above all things. So therefore, my desire is for him, right? My desire is for him. My seeking is for him, right? And sometimes you can get caught up in stupid things, chasing after this, or I'm going to have this, or I want to have that, or I'm going to seek after this. It's almost like you're always seeking after something, and after you've sought enough of this, you got to find something else to seek, right? I don't have to seek anything. I just seek him. Do you know what it is to just have someone just add to you every single thing that you need exactly when you need it? Right? Just all the time living that way. All the time living like that. I'm going to just give you a quick little story. We had been talking. We live by so many lakes. There's lakes everywhere around here, right? And we were just talking like, you know what? It would just be so cool to have like a little rowboat one day, that you could just kind of just get up on a weekend and say, we're going to go out on a boat and we're going to go on a little rowboat and go out in the middle of a lake, right? And just enjoy it, right? It's it. Like we just don't even go to lakes, right? And I remember one time, not long ago, right? One of our family members said, "Hey, we have a couple of rafts, just blow up rafts. Why don't you go out on those?" And the thing, has like a weight limit, so it's not. I don't think it was intended to have like a big guy in it, but I was out there in my little raft with 2 oars, looking probably a little foolish, but I was having the time of my life out there in that little raft. And there's like boats going by, right? And people on jet skis, and I got my little raft, right? I'm just having the time of my life. Well, but we were talking, it's just, like honestly, really, you're having a good time. The thing is, who cares what other people think, right? I'm just me and the Lord, and we're having fun, and actually my son was with me too, the second time that we went out. But anyway, we got this thing, you get a little, well, not here, you get a little desire, and you're like, it would be really cool to have a boat. I ain't gonna buy no boat. I don't want to, I don't have any desire to go and take finances right now of ours and go pay for a boat. Like, that's not the thing. It's not like that. It's just something that you utter and you say. Well, you know what? Out of nowhere, we get a call from a family member that says, hey, you know what? I got a boat. I ain't using it no more. Do you want a boat? And it's not a rowboat, right? It needed a little help, and we helped it, right? It needed a little help. It was an older boat, but we got that thing. We helped it, right? We kind of rejuvenated it, right? Put some new things on them and some little accents and stuff. And yesterday, for the first time, we're out there on our boat, driving all around the lake, right? And you know how much we paid for it? Nothing. We didn't pay anything for it. It was just something that the Lord just added, right? And it's just, those things, they're common. When our children were little, we didn't know much about how to work in the Lord, right? We knew some little things, but we'd go to Hershey Park with our kids, got a Dodge Caravan like everybody else with kids in those days had, right? And we would take out the middle seat, put some things, what do you call them? Big fluffy things that go on your bed? No, but long things. Comforter, thank you. I couldn't think of the word comforter. We put these comforters in the middle, and that's before we knew your kids should be strapped in a seatbelt when you're driving. But we'd be driving, and they're in the middle on comforters, playing in the middle of there, doing their thing, and we would sleep in this Dodge Caravan. And I remember being online at Hershey Park. We had like 2 tickets or something, and we needed 4. I don't know how it worked, but we're online like we're going in, and we're like, Lord, like, we need tickets. Like, we had enough money to get these, but that's it. But we didn't know, we didn't know we had the power to prosper us. We just knew, you know what, Lord, we know you can get us a ticket. And we weren't saying nothing. We were just online. It's not like we were saying, because some people say, that it's God. But, if I only had a ticket, a free ticket, and then somebody turns around and gives you a ticket, you think that's God. Well, no, you were just begging for it, right? And that's why somebody gave it to you. But we were just standing online, minding our own business. And a lady right in front of us, right? And we're just online, just holding our kids' hands, just waiting to go in. She turns around and she just gave us tickets. Like, you know what I'm saying? There's so many examples. I could give you example after example, but it's just such a cool thing when the Lord teaches you to live with ease, just following the Lord. And when he says to you, you know what, you follow me, don't worry about John. Right? Don't worry about John. Like, if you love John, right, then you can speak to John and you can help John, but don't try to figure it out, well, if you said that to me, are you going to correct him too? There's a thing with correction. There is a thing with correction that when the Lord corrects you, he's treating you as a son. In other words, he's treating you like someone that is like him. And contrary to some things that you might hear, the correction of the Lord is not him punishing you and making you suffer. The correction of the Lord is just the way it should be, which is correcting your mind, correcting your thoughts. So he wants to take out the junky thoughts and put good thoughts in there, right? Let me show you something real quick. If we can go to Malachi chapter, hold on. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Yeah, go to Matthew 11. We'll leave Malachi aside for a second. We'll leave him alone. Matthew 11, look at verse number 11. Matthew 11:11. He says, assuredly I say to you, among those born of women, there has not risen one greater than John the Baptist. So what he's saying there is, between the times of the law and the prophets, and there were many prophets, right, that were speaking to the people, trying to get them to understand the gospel, Jesus is saying, John the Baptist, there's no prophet greater than John the Baptist, none. And what he was given, obviously, was the task of preparing the way for the Lord. So he began to baptize people in water so that people would understand that there was one coming that would baptize them with their spirit. with his spirit, right? So what is their spirit, right? The Father and the Son's spirit, that he would baptize them with that spirit. So he began baptizing them in water as a symbol and saying, you know what? You could turn away from sin, right, in your heart and mind, and you can turn to the one that's coming, right? And he'll baptize you with the Spirit. So that was what one of the things that the Lord had put upon John the Baptist's heart, and he said that he was the greatest among prophets. But the thing to remember also, though, is that he was not born of the Spirit of God, right? He was not born of the Spirit of God. So therefore, he was not yet like the Father. Because if you are a son, that means you're like the Father now. You are a child of God. You're a son of the King. So when you're a son of the King, a son means one that's like his father, right? So John the Baptist was not just like the Father and just like Christ. He obviously he wasn't even sure when Christ appeared that was actually him, right? He was convinced, but he was not thoroughly convinced, because he even asked him later, "Are you the one, or should we look for another?" So he knew a lot of things. The Spirit of God was with him, for sure. I mean, even from his birth, actually, even from the womb, the Spirit of God was with him, right? He just was not made a new creation. That's why it says in the latter part of that verse, it says, "But he who is least in the kingdom of heaven," part of a kingdom, right? Only children are part of a kingdom. Only if you're born of the Spirit are you a part of that kingdom. "He who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he." Why? Because now we're born of God. We are just like him. So when we prophesy, the Lord prophesies through us like he prophesied through John. But I'm a son of God where he is not. I'm a child of the King where he was not a child yet, right? He was not made new, right? He was not made new. He is now, but he wasn't made new then. And then verse number 12 says, "And from the days of John the Baptist," so he says, from the days that the Lord began to say, the kingdom of heaven is like here. Like it's here. Like it's not anymore, oh, it's coming. It's like it's at hand. Like it's here, right? Because he knew Jesus Christ was on the earth. He didn't know what he looked like yet. He didn't know his facial characteristics. He didn't know if he had a mustache or not, a beard or not, if he had long hair or short hair. But he did know he's here, because the Lord had put he had put that desire on the inside of him to preach the kingdom of God is at hand, right? So he says, from the days then of John the Baptist until now, it says the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. The kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. Now, that is a bit, it's a bit to try to take in, like, what exactly does that mean? Like, what does it mean that the kingdom of heaven suffers violence and the violent take it by force? But there's when you put a few verses together, you're able to understand it. So you can stay right there, or maybe go with me, and then we'll come back to Matthew 11. But if we go to Luke 16:16, that sheds a bit more light on it. I think that'll help us see it. Luke 16:16. It says, "The law and the prophets were until John, and since that time the kingdom of God has been preached, and everyone is pressing into it." Everyone is pressing into it. So the kingdom of God has been preached, and everyone is pressing into it. So what he's talking about there, what the Lord is talking about there now, is that the kingdom of God was there. It was time for the kingdom of God. And John the Baptist was preaching it, and that preaching would have to continue, that the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven had come, right? But what he says, that the violent take it by force, he says everyone, he says in Luke 16:16, everyone is pressing into it. But what that is really entailing, right, is that there is and I was talking to you guys about this before a little bit, there is a current that is in this world, right? But it says, when it says that violent people are pressing into it, it's saying that it's the same word here used for violent, take it by force. In other words, that it is that there are people that are walking against the current, and all that they want is that which is of the kingdom, right? They want to follow the Lord into everything that he's given them. They want to enter in to that rest. The same way that Joshua and Caleb were of a different spirit, right? And they wanted to enter in. We are of a different spirit. Actually, if we have a little time, I'll share it with you. Our Father in heaven is actually called the Father of spirits, right? The Father of spirits, right? Because we are born of the Spirit, right? We are born of the Spirit. And the Spirit that we are of is the same Spirit that Caleb and Joshua were listening to, right? So the same way that they were the only two allowed to enter in, and the millions that were there, did not enter in. Actually, that entire first generation died with the exception of those two. The time that we're living in now is the same way. The time of the kingdom of God that we, in other words, being part of the kingdom now, we are able to enter in, but not everyone enters in. Not everyone enters in, but everyone doesn't enter in because they just don't know. They don't know. When people hear follow Jesus, they think that what they're following Jesus means listen to what he says and do it. Right? But following Jesus is not listen to what he said and do it. That's the law, right? Listening to what God says and then you doing it is living under the law of Moses. But we don't live under the law of Moses. Following Jesus is to enter into where he has gone into beyond the veil. In other words, the veil was his flesh. He opened up a way for us to go into it, into everything that is heavenly. We are heavenly people. We are of a kingdom of heaven. We are of the kingdom of heaven. So therefore, since we are of that kingdom, we don't just think about things of this earth, but we think about things of the heavens, right? We think about heavenly things. We are spiritually minded is another way that scripture puts it, right? We are spiritually minded people, not carnally minded people. So what happens when you are a spiritually minded person, it leads you to what? To life. Life and peace, right? So he says here that in Matthew 11 and verse number 12, he says, and from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John, and if you are willing to receive it, he is Elijah who was to come. That's actually prophesied. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think maybe it was Malachi, but it was prophesied that Elijah would return before the second coming of the Lord, that Elijah would come back again. And I don't know if that reference actually is to Elijah. Elijah would come again. I think it is before. I believe that is. I'll leave it as opinion right now because I don't know if it was the first coming or the second coming, but I think it is related to the second coming. But anyway, Elijah who was to come, it says, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. And then look at verse number 15. And you see, it's funny, we're talking about this, and it looks like he gets off topic. And it's a little like why is he bringing this in to what he's just saying? In verse number 15, he says, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. And then 16, he says, but to who shall I liken this generation? It is like children sitting in the marketplace, calling to their companions and saying, we played the flute for you, and you did not dance. We mourned to you, and you did not lament. So I'm gonna leave this right now as somewhat opinion, right, until we're a bit firmer on it. But what he's saying is, who do I liken this generation to, right? It's a generation of people that mostly don't hear and then some hear, right? Some that follow me and want to follow me into everything that I prepared for them, and many that don't. And then it says, but this generation is like children crying out to their companions, saying to them, we played the flute for you, but you did not dance. In other words, we did this, but you did not reciprocate, right? We did this and you did not respond, right? We played the flute and you did not dance. We mourned to you and you did not lament, right? So we told you, right? And you did not respond. And then that's why he says in verse 18, for John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he has a demon. So here's John the Baptist that comes, right? Because God sent John, and then he sends Jesus, and he says, you didn't like either of them, right? He says, we played the flute and you didn't dance. In other words, it was happy or lamenting, and you don't want either, right? I sent you John. He didn't come eating or drinking, and you said he has a demon. Then he says, then I come, the Son of Man comes, eating and drinking, and what do you say for him? He said, look, a glutton and a winebibber. He says, a friend of tax collectors and sinners, right? So in other words, what the Lord is saying, he says, that's who he likens this generation to people that sometimes you speak to, and they don't want it this way or the other way. But the thing is, nonetheless, there are people, though. There are Joshuas, and there are Calebs, right? And I am not surprised that there's Joshuas and Calebs here, right now, right? Why? Because if not, you would be following the multitude. If you weren't of that spirit, you wouldn't be here right now, right? You would be off with the crowds wherever the crowds are, right? Because that's where people flock to, right? They flock to crowds. They flock to that which seems a thing to do now, right? Everybody wants to go with what's going on, right? But the gospel never is old, right? Like the gospel is not like this old thing that we keep resurrecting. The gospel is the power of God unto salvation. It was then, it is now, right? It's the power to prosperity. It's to healing. It's to life. It's to everything that this world seeks after that you don't have to seek after, that the Lord adds to you, right? In other words, like when you see what the Lord is doing in your life, you see the ignorance of seeking it yourself, right? Because it comes out so bad, so bad. When you seek stuff yourself, you have to always give up something else and trade it in for this. It's just the way it works, right? But you know what? When I trade in, that's why, that last song that we sang, Give Me Jesus, right? You can have all this world. It's not that I don't need some of the stuff in it. It's just that I don't have to seek it. Everybody, you can just seek this world if you want. But all I want is you, Lord. All I want to seek, the only one I want to follow is you. I want to enter into everything that you have for me. And then you know what happens? Your family prospers from it, right? The people around you that don't even know Jesus can prosper because of you, right? And all that you've done is just said, Lord, I just want you and forget everything else, right? I just want you and forget everything else. Let's go real quick. If we can go to 2 Samuel. 2 Samuel. 2 Samuel chapter 5. And stay with me because this will begin to make sense to you. Verse number 1, 2 Samuel 5:1. It says, then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron. So David he knows now that the Lord has called him. He's been through a lot of stuff with Saul. He's been hated for a lot of stuff, right? He's been hated for one single thing, and it's just that he just is a man after the heart of God. That's it. David just wanted the Lord. And David took, here's the thing. The Lord will take you minding your business, tending to your sheep. You don't have any plans to be the king of Jerusalem. You're just tending some sheep, that's all. You're not trying to make a name for yourself. You're not trying to be the biggest YouTuber in the world. You're just minding your business, doing your little thing right here, right? What do you care about? Nothing. I'm just a shepherd. I'm doing my thing right here. This is what I care about. I'm loving Jesus, singing songs, and tending the sheep. That's all I'm doing. That's right here, this right here. The Lord takes that man and lifts him up to be one of the greatest kings, still renowned today by the Jewish nation as one of the greatest kings that have ever lived, right? Made mistakes just like everybody makes mistakes. But the thing is, the Lord raised him up, minding his business. Takes a man that is anointed to be king like King Saul, and the Lord says, I'm going to show you, Samuel. I'm going to tell you where to go, whose house to go to. His own daddy didn't, listen, David's own father didn't even think he was worthy enough to be king. He left him out in the field, right? When the prophet came to choose a king, look at all these sons. Samuel looks at the first boy, big strapping big boy, and Samuel says to the Lord, surely that's the one. Look at him, Jesus. He looks like a king. And the Lord said, nope, that ain't him. And he goes down and they get smaller and smaller and smaller and weaker and smaller, right? And he's like, whoa, none of these, huh? But the Lord sent him there. So he says, there must be one more. He says, oh yeah, there's also, the one out there. He's the crazy one. He's the one that's always seems like he has his head in the clouds, right? I can bring, and then he says, I will not move until you bring him, right? That was the one anointed to be the king of Israel. But that little ruddy one, right, was the one that stands in front of a probably 9.5 foot tall giant in the middle of a crowd of people where even his own army depreciates David and tells him, you know what are you doing here? Go back to your business. This is a battle for men, right? Get out of here. And he says, what? He says, can I be here too? Right? And then he stays. He's the one that ends up going before this Goliath of a giant and ends up taking him down with nothing but a handful of stones, right? Because he didn't care. He didn't care what other people thought. It was just him loving Jesus, and everything was added to him. Victory was added to him. He didn't have to, listen, the Lord was training him even before he knew he was being trained. The Lord had him protecting a flock against a lion, a bear, and then even a giant. The Lord has been teaching us. And this was something that was prophesied to us in 1999, right? And he said, I'm teaching you now how to take care of a bear and even a lion, right? He says, and even a giant, but he says the time will come, he says, well, you'll have to stand and reign, right? But you know what it is? How do you reign? We didn't know at the time. We thought we would reign, we're going to be kings, but we didn't know we were already kings, right? It's just immature thinking, right? You just don't know. You just don't know, right? What the Lord was telling us is, I'm going to add to you. How do you reign? You acknowledge, right, the abundance of the grace that I've given you and put on the inside of you, and of the gift of righteousness, and you will reign in life, right? Here's what happens with David. He's just been minding his business, but the Lord already told him, you will reign, right? It says in verse 1, it says, then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and spoke, saying, indeed, we are bone of your bone. Who is this speaking to him? Right? Those that are of him, right? That are his same kindred, that are those that are of his same family, right? Bone of his bone. That's what Adam said to Eve. She is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, because she has come from me, right? Because she has come from me. She came from him. She's bone of his bone and flesh of his flesh. The Lord says of us, they are of my bone and of my flesh, because we are of the what? The body of Christ, right? There is a prioritization of something that the Lord happens. When the Lord raises you up and you follow him, the Lord will direct your heart, the hearts of the fathers to the children. Children, meaning not somebody else's children, your children. In other words, the children of God. The Lord, when the Lord grows you up, the priority of God is his body. And then after his body, then come the rest of the people, right? Just like that's why you learn as a dad or as a mom, right? You don't take care of other people's kids better than you take care of your own. You don't treat somebody else's wife better than you talk to your own, right? You don't treat other people better than you treat your own family in your household, right? You don't give to others and take from yours, right? You prosper yours and then you give to others if there's left over. If there ain't, you ain't getting it. I take care of my family first. Before I give a dime to the church, I take care of my family and make sure that they're eating. In my immaturity, I used to tithe, right, and take money, grocery money out, right, to pay my tithe, because if not, I'll be cursed with a curse. Now you learn better, right, and you know that you're not cursed with any curse, right, and that the tithe is a symbol of the old covenant, so you learn today to give out of your abundance, right? So you take care of yours first. That's what the Lord was doing with David. The Lord grew David up, right, matured him in his relationship with the Father, despite anything. David learned to honor a king that wanted him dead. You know why? Because the Lord had anointed that man. A man that wanted him dead, that took a spear and wanted to put it right through him, right? But instead, what did he do? He honored that man, because he said, that is the Lord's anointed. You don't touch the Lord's anointed, right? That is a symbol of the church, right? You don't touch the church. Pastor Mike just preached a message. You don't touch my church, right? Here, the Lord has grown David up, and the people approach him now. He's full of the power of God, right? He's full of a love for the Father. He's not made a new creation yet, but he loves the Lord, right? And they said to him, indeed, you are bone, and we are your bone and your flesh. He says, and also they said to him, in time past, when Saul was king for us, you were the one that led Israel out and brought them in. And the Lord said to you, you shall shepherd my people Israel. So they said, even when he was king, we felt the power of God working through you, leading us in and out, right? And we know the Lord said to you that you shall shepherd my people Israel and be ruler over Israel. Therefore, all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed King David. They anointed David king over Israel. He was 30 years old when he began to reign, right? So this was not an older gentleman. This was a man that just learned, even at the younger age of 30, he just learned by just allowing the Lord just to grow him up in himself, regardless of what job he was doing. His own father left just, maybe nobody else wanted to be shepherd of those sheep, right? Maybe nobody else wanted to be those long nights taking care of sheep and then having to risk your life for some animal, right, against lions and bears, right? But he just minded his own business, right? But the Lord grows you up so that you can take care of you before the Lord and have the Lord take care of yours and yours, right? The Lord grows you up so that he can care for others through you, right? So he can care for others through you. That's why it's his business. Before he made Peter a minister, he said, you learn to follow me first. Listen to me, love me, and you'll see what'll come up, obviously. And Peter went on to do lots of things. I mean, he was the same one that we were talking about, where his own shadow would heal people, right? Obviously, he learned to love the Lord God with all his heart, and he made that his business, right? Paul made it his business. So David is, at the age of 30, he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. In Hebron, he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem, he reigned 33 years over all Israel and Judah. And the king and his men went to Jerusalem against the Jebusites. So here's what happens. So the Jebusites are occupying, they used to call it Jebu, I believe, but that was actually Jerusalem. It used to be called Jebu. And David goes in and he says, this is Jerusalem. This is where the city of David will be. And these people, they have to get out, right? So he goes there, and right away, the Jebusites provoke David, right away. And Pastor Mike was talking to you about vengeance, right? When people come against the church, people come against his children, the Lord will take vengeance against those people, right? So he comes in, and it says, and the king and his men went to Jerusalem against the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, who spoke to David, saying, this is how they were mocking him. They looked at David and his army, his mighty men, his army, and he says, you shall not come in here, but the blind and the lame will repel you. In other words, they were so confident of their fortification that they said, listen, our blind and lame will keep you out of here, right? You're not coming up here. And then he said, thinking that David cannot come in here. And then verse number 7, nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, that is, which is now called the city of David. And then it tells you kind of how he did it in verse number 8. Now David said on that day, he says to his men, whoever climbs up by the way of this water shaft, which I believe, I'm not entirely sure, but I believe that's where, that was kind of like how the dung came down. That's just an opinion, but that's what I think. But regardless, whoever climbs up by the way of the water shaft and defeats the Jebusites, the lame and the blind who are hated of David's soul, right? In other words, and that hated, I believe, right? Those that are loved less than everyone. So David did not have like this murderous heart where he just wanted to see everyone dead, right? And had like this, he was like a compulsive murderer, right? But he definitely had no favor at all for the Jebusites over his own people and over God. Right? And if God tells you you're going to take that land, I don't love you more than I love God, right? And then he says, whoever does that and climbs up that way and defeats the Jebusites, he shall be chief and captain. Therefore, they say, it became a saying that the blind and the lame shall not come into the house. Now, there is a thing there, though, that is pretty significant, that the Jebusites called themselves the blind and the lame. And it is very much, right, what David represents, which is Christ and Jerusalem, which represents the church, right? It's just an interesting fact that those that cannot enter into the kingdom of heaven are called blind, right? Because they cannot see, right? That seeing, Isaiah prophesied that they see, but they can't see. And hearing, they can't hear, right? And the saying became actually the opposite. The Jebusites said, the blind and the lame will repel you. The saying, after David took it and it became the city of David, the saying became, the blind and the lame shall not come into this house, right? Because that is really, truly what it is, right? The Lord is preaching a gospel that is so contrary to this world, right? But you know what? The Lord has you preach it with an overwhelming love for people. That first the church would know. Those that are bone of our bone and our flesh of our flesh. Those that are your kindred, those that are your family, those that are of the same spirit that you are of, they need to be the first to know and understand that we all need to come and follow the Lord into everything that He's given. And the only way that we can do that, the only way that Reformed Church can begin that and continue to spread that around the world, the only way that can be done is if your only care in all of your life is just to follow Jesus into all that He's given you, that it's just to love Him. If we can make that the only thing that we care about in all the world, He will give you the love that you want to have. Listen, it's not just that he gives you the love. It's that he gives you such a desire for people. He get the same desire for people that you saw Caleb have and Joshua have. The same desire that keeps men, that directs, has men stand up, men and women to be leaders in this age, to be able to direct a people that are mumbling and grumbling behind you. But you can still lead them in. Still lead them in, and they do stupid things, and they fall, and they trip, and they make dumb decisions, and they get up, and then they keep coming, right? But there's a love that the Lord gives you to not give up on people, to say, come on, I ain't slowing down for you, but come on. Oh, but I fell down. Get up and let's go, right? Get up. Stop. The desire is not for God to have us make people focus on their sins, to make them feel bad about what they've done. No, listen, let's leave the piddly stuff about sin that Jesus already defeated, and let's go. Let's stop. I mean, there's still today churches preaching, trying to get their congregations to stop sinning. Jesus already died for your sin. How much more victory do we need over sin? He's already given it, right? He's already given it. You want to get rid of sin? You want to put aside or put off the body of sin? You want to put off sin from your life? Get your eyes on Jesus. That's it, and just go. Just go. We have to teach people the simplicity of the gospel. The simplicity of the gospel, which is just faith in him. Nothing else. Faith in him. And listen, I know that there's times where you're like, oh, you know, that you get caught up in stuff and work and this and finances and bills and all this stuff. And I'm just here to tell you honestly, it is easier than you're living. It is easier than you're living. Just get your eyes on Jesus and he'll add it to you. You won't even know where it came from. You won't even know where it came from. Honestly, you will not know. Listen, I'm not stupid enough to question it, to try to figure out mathematically how it works. But I don't know. We pay our bills for this church on time. We have a very large mortgage on this building, and we have bills apart from that, right? I don't know how in the heck we do it, but every single month, we pay the mortgage earlier before it's even due, we pay it. We pay it so early sometimes that by the due date comes, we forget, did we pay it? I don't even remember if we paid it, because we paid it like 2 weeks ahead of time, right? I don't know how we do that, right? There's nobody here writing out big old checks, right? Right now, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of checks, right? But it gets done, right? The Lord doesn't want my mind worrying about how we're going to pay the bills. He doesn't want your mind wrapped up on how you're going to pay your bills. Living is more than paying your bills, right? Let's get our head, listen, we have so much, and we live like ostriches with our heads in the ground. Let's get our head out of the sand, right? And the Lord is saying, climb up here. Let's go. Let's do this. Climb up here with me. It's easy. It's easy. It may look like, oh, but I'm going upstream and everybody's going that way. But the walk is simple. It's easy. It's easy because you just have your eyes on him. Listen, and then it's beautiful the way he adds it. I'm going to tell you just one thing about relationship, because I see young people here too. But I have loved this always. And I even talked to my son about this years and years and years ago. That I love the picture of Abraham and his son Isaac. And Abraham is a picture of the father, and Isaac is just a picture of us, right? And Isaac, he had a desire to get married. He wanted to get married, but Abraham told him, just don't you pick. If you pick, you're just going to pick the first one that's around you, right? I mean, oh, well, she's very pretty. Well, is that how you pick a wife? You pick a pretty one. Wow, what an awesome way to do stuff. You pick a pretty one. It's like you're picking up puppies, right? There's a pretty puppy and you pick it up and that's your puppy now, right? That's not how you pick a wife. You don't pick a wife like you pick a puppy, right? That's not how we make decisions. You don't pick a job because it's the first one. Somebody came and told me, you want a job? Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, that's what I want. Look, we don't consider the Lord. We don't walk like we have the mind of Christ in us. We don't live like we know where the heck we're going, right? You don't just pick a wife like you pick a puppy. You know what he says? The Lord, Abraham just eases his mind. Said, don't worry about it. You get your mind on something else. Don't worry. You want a wife? Good. Just don't worry about the wife though, right? So it says he's out in the cool of the day, and he said he's just meditating. minding his business, just like David was minding his business, tending to his sheep, right? Just like Abraham was minding his business, and all of a sudden the Lord shows up and says, I am the Lord God, right? Leave your kindred and go to a land. Whoa, what, when, what happened, right? All of a sudden, everything, people just minding their business, right? Just minding their business, and the Lord takes care, the Lord shows you, and he teaches you. He's just meditating on the Lord, looks up, I think it was a camel, right? Here comes a camel and a lady on it. And he looks at her and she looks at him, and that's the one that my father Abraham had sent a servant, right? And he added her to me. See, you don't pick a wife. You don't pick stuff, right? You don't pick things yourself, right? You allow the Lord to be the one to give you the desire for it, and then you allow him to do it, right? You don't have to make it happen. You don't have to squeeze it into shape, right? But you allow him to do it. You know what we do? We mind our business and we keep our mind on the Lord. That's all. That's how you succeed in business. That's how you succeed in an economy that's failing. That's how you succeed in famine and become second in command to Pharaoh and have the whole world is dying, but you have bread. That's where bread and famine comes from. Just you minding your business, right? Joseph could have been, for 2 years, he's waiting for some guy that he told a dream to get him out of prison. For 2 years, right? He told him a dream 2 years before. The guy forgot totally about him, right? But that's what people do, right? People forget about you, but the Lord never forgets. The Lord never forgets. So he wasn't, the Bible doesn't say he was grumbling and complaining for 2 years. Oh, I have it so bad. You know, I've been loving Jesus, and look at me, I'm nothing and I'm in prison. Just loving God, just kept right on course. 25 years Abraham took. 25 years before his son was born. The Bible says in Romans chapter 4 that he grew strong in faith. What does that even mean, that he grew strong in faith? He grew strong in knowing the Lord, right? His strength grew. His strength, and here's the thing that I'll leave you with, and if you could help me find it, I don't know, Matthew, where it is, but if you guys could help me find it, Colin, it's strengthen, Hebrews 12, I bet you. Strengthen the hands which hang down. Yeah, Hebrews chapter 12. Look at it real quick, and we're going to wrap up here. It's 11:59, and there's plenty of lunch to go around for everyone in your own house, not here. Okay, but anyway, plenty of food. Don't worry, it's not going to go anywhere. Hebrews chapter 12. Look at verse number 1 real quick. I'll go through it as fast as possible. Therefore, we also, Hebrews 12:1, since we're surrounded with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us. Let us run. You see that? Let's run. Let's run with him, right? Let's not walk. Well, we have all the time. Let's run. Let's run, right, to follow him into everything that he's given us. If he died for it, we want it. If he died to give it to us, we want it, right? Now. Not when he comes back. Now we want it, right? Oh, but people don't agree with that. Now we want it. Today is the day. Today is the day. Let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. How do we do it? How do you run? Looking unto Jesus. How do you run? How do you live? How do you work? How do you succeed? How do you prosper? Looking unto Jesus, right? The same way David did it, the same way Abraham did it, the same way Solomon did it, right? When did Solomon fail in his life? You read the richest man that had ever lived, right? Much more prosperous than his own father, right? King David. He allowed all the wives and their gods to take his eyes off of the Lord, right? Obviously, he was not born again like we are. He was not made new like we are, right? So he was well able to return to the muck that he came from, and he did, right? And he did. But that's why he says, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, despising the shame, and he sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. That's the one we should be beholding. The Jesus that is at the right hand of the Father. You want an example of what you have? Look at him, and you'll know. Right? What is he? If he has it, you have it. If he doesn't have it, you don't have it. Does he have sickness, disease, death, decay, depression, problems, right? People with power over him, people that can threaten him? No. People hate him, but they can't touch him, right? People can hate you, but they can't touch you, right? We have to acknowledge that, of course. We can't just think that. We have to acknowledge it. It says, for consider, it tells you like how to live in verse number 3. Consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your own soul. Like, Lord, but I'm going this way. Are you sure, Lord, that this is the way? Nobody's coming. Nobody's coming. Like, there's like 3 people here. Is this the right way, Lord? Right? Look at him. Everybody left him. He's preaching a message to 5,000. They all leave. And then he looks at the 12. He says, you can go too if you want. Right? Did he care how many were listening to him? He wanted people to listen, of course. But if they leave, is he going to be hurt? Oh, cut to the quick. My God, they all left me. They hate me. I must be wrong. Right? You keep preaching, and more will come. Keep preaching, and more do come. And then some leave. Right? It's the way it works. It's the way it works. Consider him who would do such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your mind and your soul. For you have not yet resisted the bloodshed like he did. He died on the cross for it, right? He died on the cross, and he isn't asking you to die on a cross, right? He did that, right? Striving against sin. And have you forgotten the exhortation which speaks to us as sons? This is how God treats his sons. He corrects their heart. He says, my son, do not despise the chastening, the correction of the Lord, nor be discouraged when he rebukes you, when he tells you, you know what, you're thinking wrong. Those thoughts you're having, they stink. They're sucky thoughts, right? I got better thoughts for you, right? Listen to this. Listen to this. Verse number 6 says, for whom the Lord loves, he chastens, he corrects, and scourges every son whom he receives. Then he says, if you endure chastening, if you endure correction, if you allow the Lord to correct you, listen, you'll get used to it and you'll love it. I love it when the Lord corrects my thinking. You know why? Because I know what's happening is he's taking thoughts out that are trying to kill me, right? And he puts in thoughts that give me life. I want him to do that, right? At first it felt like, oh, he's like ripping my brain apart. Like everything that I heard is not the way I thought it was. That you're going to love it, right? You're going to love it. He who endures chastening, God is dealing with you as sons. Because if you weren't a son, he wouldn't correct you. Because he couldn't. If you weren't a son, he wouldn't correct you because he couldn't correct you. He wouldn't have entrance into your heart, right? For what son is there whom the Father does not chasten? But if you are without chastening, without correction, of which all have become partakers, then you are illegitimate and not sons at all, right? Furthermore, we have had human fathers who corrected us, and we paid them respect. Shall we not much more, listen, shall we not much more readily be in subjection to the Father of spirits and live? To the Father of spirits. We are of his bone and of his flesh, because we are born of his spirit, right? The Bible says in 1 John, we're born of the Spirit. Those who are his have the Spirit. We're born of his Spirit. That's why he's called the Father of spirits, right? And when you allow the Father of spirits, whom we all have the same Spirit, think about the whole church. Go with this vision with me, right? That started with Reformed Church years ago and then spreads to the earth. It starts with this many people, right? And then spreads. How does it spread? Because you allow him to correct your mind, right? To treat you as a son. You have to first even know that you are a son, right? Most of the church feels embarrassed to call themselves sons of God. But he's not afraid to call you his brethren. He's not ashamed to call you his brother, but you're ashamed to call yourself a son because he is a son, right? We are of the same Father. We are of the same Father. That would mean you're a son, right? Doesn't matter what it sounds like to you. You know what? If it sounds funny, you know what that needs? Correction. Right? Don't despise the correctioning of the Lord. Let him correct it, right? Let him correct it. It says if you endure, but where were we? Verse number 9, very, very quickly, I told you. Furthermore, we have had human fathers who corrected us and we paid them respect. Shall we not much more readily be in subjection to the Father of spirits and live? That's what happens when you allow him to correct your mind. You have life and life abundantly that he came to give you. For indeed, for a few days he chastened us as it seemed best to them, your earthly fathers, but he for our profit, everything that he does for your profit, so that you'll profit. It's not like your parents used to tell you, oh yeah, this is for your good. Well, kind of like that a little bit, right? Like you corrected your kids. They didn't like it when you whacked their behind, but it was for their own good, right? I know today that's a thing. I get it. Just let your kids do whatever they want and flail around and get into whatever trouble they're going to get into because you have to respect them as individuals, and then they get hit by a car and then you wonder why they got hit by a car. Anyway, verse number 10. For indeed, for a few days chastened us as seemed best to them, your earthly fathers, but he for our profit, that we may be partakers of his holiness, right? He wants us to be partakers of all that he has. Now, no chastening or no correction seems to be joyful. We're wrapping up here. For the present, but painful. Nevertheless, afterward, it said it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. Therefore, and this is where I'm going to end, and this is where I wanted you to see that picture, right? We have our heads in the sand sometimes, right? But we're full of so much. When you get your head out of the sand, which is your head out of seeking the things of this world, and you set your eyes on the Lord, and you say, Lord, I want to enter into everything that you died to give me, right? Verse number 12 then is so applicable. Your hands there really are speaking about your mind. It says, therefore, strengthen the hands which hang down and the feeble knees, and make straight paths for your feet, so that what is lame may not be dislocated, but rather be healed. Right? So, and that's a reference really to 2 Samuel where we were reading, right? It says the blind and the lame will not enter in, right? What the Lord is saying there, he says, you are neither blind nor lame. You have been given sight to see. So that means you don't have to be short-sighted, right? You don't need glasses. You can see, right? You can see. It's just that sometimes we convince ourselves that we're nothing but grasshoppers. We convince ourselves that we're being overpowered. We convince ourselves that it's the fault of the government. We convince ourselves that it's the fault of our employer and not my fault. In other words, the reason why my life is the way it is because my boss is a horrible boss, and this person doesn't let me get ahead, and this one doesn't love me, and this one hates me, and the reason why I don't have money is because this person wants to kill me, and this one. But you know what? David and many men and women of God have risen up above all the threats of this world and all that the world could do to them and all the imprisonment and all the stuff. And Paul said, and God has delivered me out of them all, right? So there is no more excuses, right? We are people that can see, and we've been given the power of God. So all we're saying is, let's strengthen our hearts and minds in the Lord, so that you can see the path that God has you to follow. You're following the Lord, which has entered in before you into glory. That's the path that the Lord wants you on. Don't move to the left or to the right. Just follow that path and nothing else. Just stay there, right? Just stay there. Just follow the Lord. Don't turn one way or the other. And the only thing that ends, right? The only place that it ends is life, right? That's the only place it ends. You know, I'll stop with this. There used to be a time when the Lord was teaching us about, you know, just this one thing. And then something happened one day where I just saw it so clearly. Like, Lord, that is like a guarantee. Like, it's not like the things of this world that sometimes work out and sometimes they don't. Like, Lord, if I no matter what's happening, right? I say, Lord, I'm going to believe you no matter what's happening, regardless of what is occurring, right? You can be around people that you thought were your friends, and they look at you and they criticize you and they make fun of you because you have a desire to just want to follow the Lord. And when you stop doing the things that you used to do with people, not about a discipline thing, but just because you don't feel like doing it anymore, right? And have people depreciate you and ridicule you, right? Like what character of mind does it take? What strong faith in the Lord does it take to be like, you know what, that doesn't matter. It's like if the whole world hates me, the Lord will add people by my side that love me, right? People that depreciate you like that, blind and lame. Why are you trying to hang with people that are blind and lame? Hang out with those that are bone of your bone and flesh of your flesh, that know who you are and you know who they are, right?
We hope you enjoyed this message from Reformed Church. If you have, please share this with someone else and help us get this uncommon truth out to the world. If you'd like to support this good news, you can do so at reformedchurch.com/give. Also on our website, you can take advantage of our free messages, articles, and even full discipleship courses. Start reforming your mind now at reformedchurch.com.